Good morning and welcome to the Terry Leadership Speaker Series. My name is Molly Garud and I'm a third year with the Institute of Leadership Advancement, studying management and finance. The Institute for Leadership Advancement in the Terry College of Business is an undergraduate certificate program that develops values-based, impact-driven leaders. ILA instills leadership capabilities, promotes self-development, and improves communication, teamwork, innovation, and adaptability in our ever-changing global environment. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Ms. Julie Schertell. Ms. Schertell is the president and CEO of Mativ, a global specialty materials company that combats customers' complicated problems with scientific, engineering, and creative solutions. It couples these insights with excellent manufacturing to produce quality products for consumers. Formerly president and CEO of Neenah Inc, she has held numerous leadership positions within Neenah over the past 14 years, including Chief Operations Officer, Segment President of Technical Products and Fine Paper and Packaging, and Vice President and General Manager of Fine Paper and Packaging. Ms. Schertell used her many leadership roles to revise the company's mission, vision, and strategy to match its core values. She tailored these objectives to Neenah's culture, which increased the technical products revenue from 40% to 70%. Ms. Schertell began her career at Georgia Pacific as an analyst in finance for consumer products. While at Georgia Pacific, she served in several roles over her 16-year career there, including Vice President of Sales and Marketing Strategy, Vice President of Supply Chain, Director of Sales and Operations, and the Director of Financial Planning and Analysis. Ms. Schertell uses her leadership experience to place people in the right roles to accomplish Mativ's values of growth, sustainability, and values-based decision-making objectives. Ms. Schertell earned a bachelor's degree in accounting from Florida State University College of Business and a master's in accounting degree from University of Georgia's Terry College of Business. We are thrilled by the unique opportunity to hear from Ms. Schertell today. Please join me in welcoming today's speaker.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Ellie Poindexter, and I'm a junior fellow. I'm studying finance with a minor in communication studies, and I have just had the wonderful pleasure of getting to know Ms. Schertell, and I'm so excited to facilitate today's discussion. She brings so much wisdom and insight through her experiences to the business industry. It is such an honor to have you here today.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I'm so excited to talk to all of you. I love the energy on campuses, so I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, so Ms. Schertell, to get us started, walk us through your educational background and how it has led you thus far in your career.
Sure. So as Molly mentioned, I had an undergraduate degree in accounting and then a graduate degree in accounting, but I never actually really did accounting. And I think that's part of the lesson or the advice I would give you is what you're learning is how to think about things and what you love to do and maybe what you don't love to do. So from there, from my graduate degree, I went to work at Georgia Pacific. I was in what we would call financial planning, so there is definitely finance involved, and I spent a fair amount of time there. I moved into supply chain roles. I moved into process control type of roles, like engineering process control for process improvement. I moved into leading integration efforts when two companies come together. And what I would tell you is all of those things aren't linear. Your career typically is not linear. I took steps backward to go forward in the future. I tried new things. I took some risks, and those were the best moments of my career. That's when I learned the most, when I stepped out of my comfort zone. So if I'd want to leave you with something from that, it's that career paths can be very windy, and they don't always step up linearly. And I think that's okay, and it's really good. Learning what you like. I knew I wanted to get closer to the customer was important, and so to do that, I had to do some different things in my career.
Yeah, and oftentimes as college students, we feel that it's a one and only path, that there's one direction we have to go in, and there is not much deviation that we can do. And so what advice would you have just as we step into confidence navigating those situations?
My advice would be try it. Like, be bold. Now is the time in your life to take as much risk as you can with your career. Not crazy risk. I'm not talking about things like that, but try something new. And when you have the opportunity, jump in and take it. When somebody asks for a volunteer, volunteer. Even when you don't know how to do it, you are smart. You will figure it out. You're as smart as anybody else in that room, and you need to remember that, and you'll figure out how to do it. And I think that's what makes a big difference. Everybody wants to work with someone they like working with, and they like working with people who are hardworking and jump in and are willing to try, to solve the most difficult problems. So my advice would be try things, be bold, get out and learn that it's a global economy. Travel. You don't have to travel across the world. You can travel to a different town to learn different cultures, but getting to know different people and how we engage and interact, that's really what it's all about from a leadership standpoint.
Yeah, that's awesome. When did you first discover your passion for business transformation?
I would say, in full confession, I started as an undergraduate degree with a major in marine biology. I thought I would feed dolphins and ride on Shamu. That was before all the blackfin, bad things that came out. I would say, then I had an internship doing that and realized it wasn't for me. Went into business, and I just really loved it ever since. And I think what I really love about it is it's so multifaceted. It's about understanding the financials for sure, but it's really about how you work with people and how you engage and how you ensure we have the right people in the right places and can bring their full selves to work every day and contribute. So I think whether it's business or medicine or law, I think having that passion and perseverance is really important and what makes people most successful.
Yeah. Why did you switch from marine biology to business?
Well, I did this internship, and I realized that I would be carrying dead fish around, feeding dolphins who could care less about me, and that I might not have the best opportunity for great jobs in the future. So at the time I graduated, an accounting degree was almost like a guaranteed job. And even though I didn't want to go to work for some of the auditing firms, I knew that I could get a good job, and then I could then continue to do what I wanted to do and try different things.
Yeah. So as you reflect back through those experiences, what would you say is the most valuable character strength that you have saw in yourself to aid to that success?
I would say I would probably characterize it as grittiness or grit, the willingness to jump in and tackle difficult problems, and having the resilience and tenacity to see them through and get things done. I mean, everybody loves people that have big, grand ideas, but if you can't execute on the ideas, if you can't drive performance, they don't really matter. So my background, everybody has a brand. You have a brand right now, and in the work environment, as you begin working, you get to recreate your brand. And I would suggest you really think about that. How do you want to brand yourself? I would say my brand is grittiness and competitiveness and getting things done, and not taking myself too seriously. But if you don't brand yourself, if you don't become known for something, you will have a brand. It's just somebody else will control your brand. So I would think about, what do you want to be known for? And then how do you bring that to life in the work environment? And for me, that was kind of that grittiness, competitiveness, with not too much of an edge, because you can go a little bit too far that way too. You have to understand that you're really working with people, and that that team collaboration matters and is how we win.
Yeah. I read in an interview that you did that being a CEO was never your initial goal, but it was the result of saying yes to opportunities. And so you said, when I was younger, I was just taking any opportunity that was provided to me, and I had great sponsors and mentors that provided me with different opportunities. So looking back, what were some of those transformative moments where you did say yes?
I think it's when I really stepped out of my comfort zone. So moving from a financial role to a supply chain role, to planning and asset management type of roles, I didn't know how to do that, but I had a really strong mentor. I started in a manufacturing plant, and the leader of that plant was a great mentor for me, and he offered me the opportunity, and I felt like I had enough support from him and others to take that opportunity. So then I went into manufacturing kind of in operations, which was not my background, and I was working with operators on the assets that were older than my dad, who had been doing this forever, who knew a heck of a lot more than I did about this. But because I realized I needed to tap into them, and they realized how much I respected them, it became a really great partnership. So I think taking those risks of things that I didn't really even think about, but were provided the opportunity, I jumped in on those. So that was definitely one. I also led a very large customer service team at Georgia Pacific. It was about 100 people, and that was a great learning experience in leadership, because it's just an issue after an issue after an issue every single day. And so you learn how to lead by example, and also set kind of standards of how we're going to talk to one another, because that's how you'll talk to your customers is really important. And that if we are true to our values, if we're firm in our values and how we think about things, it makes decisions a lot easier. So I think those type of roles, like a big leadership role of a very diverse group, was very pivotal. Stepping into a new spot in an organization that I didn't know how to do was very pivotal. I think those are really important, and I would encourage you, to take all those opportunities, to create those opportunities in your own work experience.
Yeah, that is incredibly powerful encouragement to all of us. Just stepping into those situations and just saying yes, having the courage and the boldness to just dive into all of those opportunities. We recently read in an article for ILA that discussed the path to success. And the article read, "Successful careers are not planned. They develop when people are prepared for opportunities because they know their strengths, method of work, and values." So what would you say are your biggest strengths, your method of work, and then, of course, your values?
Sure. I think that's a great quote, because I think it's very true. I mean, you're majoring in something right now, but you may not want to do that for the rest of your life. And as you get into the work environment, you're going to learn about a lot of different career opportunities and have the flexibility to do that. So I think taking those opportunities, saying yes, is really important. I think being true to our values, there's kind of this foundational element of values, like be respectful, be honest, integrity. That's kind of table stakes. That's not going to get us to the next level. Things like be willing to challenge each other in a respectful manner, and then align and really move forward together. Move with speed and purpose. So don't be the one that analyzes things forever. Analyze, make a decision, and then take action, I think is really important. I would tell you, one of my brandings is I'm definitely known for speed. I really think it matters, and that we can't go slow because our competitors are not going slow. So I think that's an important part of it. So I think those are some of the examples I would give you. I think taking a chance, believing in yourself. You're going to feel at times like you don't know what you're doing, but everybody feels that way at times throughout your career. So just have the confidence in yourself to try something new, and know that you'll figure it out.
Yeah. So for you specifically, how has understanding these things just allowed you to step into opportunities more confidently?
I think part of it is being surrounded with people that you trust and value. So when you're surrounded with a team or managers or leaders that you kind of have the support system or the support network in place, they're not going to let you fall down and hurt yourself too badly, is really important. And most of those relationships, I would tell you, I think happen very naturally. Mentorship type of relationships tend to happen, that are most successful, tend to happen naturally. So I think that's, being surrounded with the right type of people. I think as you also grow in your career, you'll realize over time that who you work with and who you work for really, really matters. Yeah. Because you spend such a big part of your life at work or working, you want to enjoy it. You want to enjoy the people you work with and really trust and value and enjoy the person you work for. If you're not, you should probably go do something else, because you spend too much time there to not enjoy it. So I think, being surrounded with the environment and the culture is really important, for that culture that matters to you and what you want to be a part of and continue to contribute toward.
Yeah. Can you elaborate more specifically on a specific individual or mentor that has just transformed your career and just helped shape that development?
I think, sure, I think there's a couple. I would tell you one of them, I think sometimes you learn as much things you don't want to do as things you do want to do as a leader. So early in my career, I worked for a gentleman who was just, he was that example of things I didn't want to do. He would sit down in his corner office, and my office was down the hallway, and he would just yell for me down the hallway, or he would come into my office and like take the phone out of my hand and hang it up. So I was like, gosh, it was so overt, like I'm never going to treat people this way. So I think that's important recognition. And then I worked for a gentleman for a long time who really led with his heart and values and really knew that everyone wants to be seen as an individual but be part of something bigger. And he gave me a lot of opportunities to be a part of something bigger, but I knew he always had my back and would support me. And he was a great one. I could go to him and say, hey, I don't want you to solve this for me, but I just want to bounce some things off you. And I think having those relationships, whether it's where you work or with friends, being able to bounce things off one another, work through your thought process, I think that's how you learn the most. So this was a gentleman I worked for or around for probably 15 years of my career. Everywhere he went, he would recruit me, and I followed him because I just really valued how he set the example. The other thing he did is I worked for him at a point in my life where I had just had my first child. My son's 22 now, but I had just had my first child, and he was just fantastic about helping me understand and believe and learn you can have it all. You can't do it all, but you can have it all, and that work-lifestyle balance matters for everyone. It's different for everyone, but you have to own it. And you want to work in an environment that allows you to own that balance. Yeah. So he was a great leader. I still am in touch with him. I just had drinks with him a couple of nights ago, so I really value him.
Yeah, that's awesome. So back before we were talking about some opportunities that you said yes to. Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of us can attest to saying yes to too many opportunities sometimes and just getting very overwhelmed. So have you ever said no to an opportunity, and how did you navigate making that decision?
Sure, I think it's how you say no. There's ways to say no in a very diplomatic manner, and there's ways to say, hey, I don't think I can do that right now, but can I do this for you? To find a compromise. So I think that's an important one. And sometimes it's saying no, not even completely to the opportunity, but to the timing of the opportunity. Like, I need to be at this point, my daughter needs to finish 5th grade or whatever it may be, but I'm really interested. Can we work something out where I do this, from home for a while and then I can travel? So I think it's finding solutions. But you don't want to overwhelm yourself either, so I wouldn't be afraid to say no, but it's how you say no, it's how you communicate, and you're learning that today when you talk to professors and to your friends and everything else, that communication really matters.
Yeah. So how much of your success would you accredit to your knowledge and capacity, background, or just your willingness to say yes and step into those roles?
I think 80% plus of your career success will be how you do things, not what you know. We are all replaceable, every single one of us in a job. If I left my role tomorrow, they would find a new CEO, and that person would come in and do a good job. But it's how you work together, and it's how you portray yourself to others, and how you drive followership so that people want to work with you and around you and support you and drive loyalty. So I think that's really important. Yeah. I think the culture that we create at Mativ is really important. It starts with me at the top, and I have to live that and bring that to life. And if I don't, no one else is going to either. And if you're ever a part of an organization that doesn't have a clearly defined culture, it's tough. When you have a clearly defined culture, it helps you understand what you are and what you're not, and how we want to behave together and how we don't want to behave together. And then we can hold each other accountable to those actions and behaviors. And our expectation is that we all hold each other accountable across the organization for those things.
Yeah. So you said that when you became Chief Executive Officer of what was Neenah, now is Mativ, you said that we spent the first year under my leadership refining our vision, our mission, and our strategy. We got really honest about who we are and what we needed to do to accelerate growth. So you recognized that everyone had to be aligned with the mission, values, strategy before the company could significantly advance. So could you elaborate on these aspects of what you were envisioning for the culture, the values of your company?
Sure. So we start with our strategy, our company and business strategy, and then everything else is enabling that strategy, including the culture and the values that we have. So we worked together to define where we want to be in the future. What do we want to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now versus our current company and business performance? And then what do we need to do differently? And for us, we had to get very focused. We have, we're $3 billion in revenue, but we have probably 20-ish different businesses. That's just too complex. We needed to get into fewer, larger, growing businesses. And so that was really our approach. And so our strategy became very clear. We then worked on our values. What are those things and how will we work together to bring that strategy to life? And we wanted to make it very personal to our company so that you couldn't open up a page on the internet and read our values and think it was Google or Walmart or any other company. So we did things and we worked with the large part of the organization to develop the values, and we tried to use language that was very much our own. Like, we have a value that says make it happen. Like, that means we're scrappy, we're going to take action, we're going to make things happen, we're going to roll up our sleeves and make things happen. So we didn't try to use a fancy consultant type of word, we just said make it happen. And then you have to make sure it translates into all the different languages appropriately across the world. We have a value that says speed with purpose. So we're basically saying we have a strong bias for action. We have a value of actively experiment. So we're trying to say to the organization, try it. It's okay if you fail. We expect you to fail. If you're not failing on some of your experiments, you're not probably stretching yourself enough. So I think making them very personal to us was important. And then we have what we call the Mativ placemat, or the North Star, and it basically puts all of that on one page so that every person in our company, all 7,500 employees, has a view of our strategy, our mission, our values, and how we bring those to life. And if I'm in the finance organization, I have that view, and then I have my finance North Star as well, which has my finance team's mission and vision and how they're going to help drive that strategy. I believe it's really important, a couple things. I believe strategy is really important, but it has to be actionable. It cannot be just conceptual. I believe that you have to be able to articulate it easily at all levels in the organization. If I'm an operator in one of our plants, he or she ought to be able to talk about our strategy in his own words and how he fits into it. So it has to be understandable. And then we have to hold ourselves accountable to bring it to life. So we have key metrics and reviews where we're marching towards what did we say we're going to do, and then how did we do that? And do we need to pivot and course correct, or to continue down the same path that we're on? So I think you can't underestimate strategy, but culture can eat strategy for breakfast. If we can't work together well, if we can't get things done, if we're not collaborative, if we're not learning from each other, if we don't have a diverse workforce, we're not going to be successful. So they have to go hand in hand.
Yeah. How have those values reflected your own?
They're pretty similar in many cases. So I would say some are aspirational and some are things we and I do well today. So I do have a strong bias for action. That's one of our values. And I knew, being the CEO, it needed to be one of our values to be successful. I would tell you, actively experimenting is probably one of our more aspirational ones. We still have some risk-averse parts of our company. So I think there's a combination of them there. One of our values is, we call it challenge and align, which means actively, respectfully challenge one another. Ask why we're doing something, talk about if it really makes sense. Because you don't want everybody to just be expecting one person knows all the answers. You want to challenge each other. Then once we challenge that and kind of knock it around together, we align and we say, we're going to lock arms and we're in this together. Yep, we're going to take all that pricing, but if we lose the business, we're in it together. Nobody's going to pass blame to the individual person. So I think that's a really important element as well of kind of me and then what we've portrayed in the values.
Yeah, so as a CEO leading all of these people, how do you foster that environment? Because saying this is much easier than actually implementing it and doing it. So how do you foster this environment for your company?
I think I have to bring it to life and be aware of it every single day. And I have to surround myself with a team that's willing to call me out if I'm not living it, to say, hey, that didn't really foster a challenge type of environment. You just shut that down in that meeting. So I think creating that environment, having the team in place where we're willing to challenge one another is really important. I think the little things matter too. And as you continue to progress in your career, I think you'll recognize this more and more. It's not the hard technical skills that will make all the difference. It's the soft leadership skills that will make all the difference. And it can be very small things. I would tell you, if I go into a plant, who I say good morning to is noticed, right? If I know the person's name is noticed. If I talk to someone and don't talk to someone else, it's noticed. So I think just being aware of those little things and how you can come across, and that recognizing that as a leader, you're influencing a lot of people. And I think, so for me, I just think of myself, I started in a paper mill, so I kind of just think of myself as one of the team in the paper mill, right? But I think as you advance in your career, it's important to recognize you have greater influence, and you can use that influence in a really positive way. You can use it in a negative way, but preferably in a really positive way to help.
Yeah, I know you probably wouldn't say this, but I can already just sense just an overwhelming humility in your character, and so it's really easy to follow someone that possesses that and just has a for you culture, and that you're for your employees and clients.
It's funny you say that, because one of our values is confident humility. It's like we want to walk with a little bit of swagger, but we want to be humble and actively learning, and so I think that's important, and that's a very authentic part of who we are as a company.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you mentioned having the right people in the right roles, and I know that's a really critical challenge that businesses face. And so when you look for people to step into roles, what do you look for in people, and how do you navigate assigning those responsibilities?
I mean, there's different ways to do it. Internally, we have a succession planning process. So we're always evaluating our internal team and then what opportunities we can provide to them as they advance in their career. Externally, we're also looking for candidates that come in eager to learn, that are willing to try new things, that have confidence, but that also recognize they have a lot to learn, and that they can learn a lot from others around them. And then we really need people in roles that can collaborate, can work as a team. Most of what you're doing in the work environment is in some kind of team effort. And so you can be the smartest person in the world, but if you leave collateral damage because you can't work with anyone, it's just not going to work out. So that collaborative nature is really important.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about the company's values. What would you say is the most important value that you guys have?
Our most important value is safety, because we're a manufacturing organization, so the health and wellness of our employees is critical. And we expand safety beyond just getting hurt on the job. It means you can bring your full self to the organization as well, whoever you are from your background, and and that we're an inclusive, inviting environment. It means that we put efforts in place so that your personal data is safe, those type of elements. But it starts with safety, and the health and wellness of our employees is our number one value.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know it can be really hard to have all those just kind of get lost and, not really embodied in your culture, but it's really evident that you really prioritize that for your employees and for your workers.
We do, and I think anybody who's come to work with us has recognized it, and I think it's part of what makes us successful and what people love about, the company that we are today. It's a very authentic, humble, competitive, fun place. We also don't take ourselves too seriously. I mean, we all make mistakes, and especially if your value is moving fast, you're gonna make some mistakes sometimes and make some decisions. And we all make too many decisions on any day to not make some bad decisions. So as long as we learn from them and how we recover from them, that's really the important part.
Yeah. So what do you look for in people and employees that will accelerate this mission and this growth? Are there any like specific character strengths that you can encourage us to embody as we move forward within our careers that you look for?
I think curiosity is really important when you start your career. Just having this relentless level of curiosity for learning different things, how we do things, why we do things the way we do, what we can do differently. So I think that's one. I think the other one is just this restlessness of wanting to make things better, no matter what part of the organization you're in, being restless and having this innate drive to continue to make improvements is really important. And then I think a willingness to kind of stand up and say what you believe in. And sometimes it's not always going to be popular, but it's really important that everyone kind of has their voice heard, and we want folks in the organization that are willing to stand up and say, this is what I believe we should do and this is why.
Yeah, and that all starts with instilling that culture, like you said. You know, people are not going to have the confidence or the courage to stand up if they don't first see that or experience that with their company, and so that's really awesome. So you're not only running a successful company, but you also have the wonderful title of mom. So how has that work-life balance been a challenge for you in this fast-paced environment?
You know, it's changing so quickly right now because of the hybrid work environment that's changing so quickly. I think it's an important lesson to recognize what I said earlier, like you can have it all. I truly believe it. I believe I have it all. I can't do it all. And so I pick and choose what I'm willing to give up on. We always eat dinner together as a family. It's not always a home-cooked dinner. Sometimes, a lot of times, it's a takeout dinner. But we sit down and we have dinner, and we make sure we know when we're all available to do that. I made it a priority that, you know, when my kids are playing sports, I put it on my calendar, and I leave. And if I lead by that example, it gives everybody else the freedom to lead by that example and to have those same things. Because you know, that time with your family, you can't get it back. And I think it's really important to find the balance. It is different for everyone. I went through a time in my career where, you know, my husband would have the mornings, so to speak. I would get out of the house before the kids got up. So he would do the ponytails and I would go to work early, and then I would come home early. So I'd have the afternoon. And then when the kids went to bed, I'd get on my laptop. And it's what worked for us. And we kind of got into that routine. So I think finding what works for you, finding an environment that allows you the flexibility to do that is important. So talking about that, I do want to say, you know, there is this shift right now of working from home versus working in the office. I would encourage you, if you have the opportunity, to spend some face-to-face time. I know it's changing and it's in flux, but you're at this point in your career when you start out that you're just a sponge and you're learning so much. And you learn so much from being around people and the walks down the hallway and the time in the break room and the going to lunch. And I'm not saying it has to be every day, but I think there's a lot to be said, and it's really important, particularly when you're young in your career, to have some face-to-face time so that you continue to learn from people. Not always the popular answer. Even in my office, you know, we have hybrid work and we're doing things differently, but there's a lot of value, I think, of spending some time in the office when you can.
Yeah, it's so funny you said your husband does some ponytails. My dad also did my ponytails sometimes.
Yes, not always great, but.
Yeah, that's awesome. It definitely is so evident that, you know, because you prioritize that value with your company, your employees get to see that, and then they get to then, you know, be better parents because they see you doing that, which is incredible.
I think it's important, and I think when you give people that flexibility, they're better. They're better working for us because they're happier, they're more productive, they feel valued, which is critical.
Yeah, that's awesome. So from all that perspective, do you have any advice just for us college students as we prepare to embark on this next journey and as we face this work-life challenge and just like the limitations that we feel like we might have, but that are just the misconstrued perspective?
Sure. First thing I would say is don't be too hard on yourself. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. You're going to do great things. Each of you will find your own way, and don't put too much pressure on you. Don't let other people put too much pressure on you. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to do dumb things. You're going to say dumb things. We all did. You're going to feel it so much more than anybody else in the room. And you're going to bounce right back from it, and it's not going to matter at all. So don't be too hard on yourself. The second one is, this is a little bit of maybe mom, but learn personal finance. Like, when you graduate, understand the money you're making and how you're going to use it and what you want to do with it, and start right away. It's really important. You control your own destiny financially. Nobody cares about it more than you. So really important, I think, that you learn personal finance. And the third one would be bold, try some things differently, learn more about the world and about people. I think that's really important. And if I was going to do anything, different, if I looked back, I'd say network. It really matters. You can, I feel like I kind of went to the old school of put your head down and work like crazy, and then you'll get ahead. And it worked out for me, but it's not always that way. Networking and knowing people and understanding more about the world and how relationships work really, really matters in this environment. So I would encourage you to do that as well.
Yeah, I feel like I've already just gained so much clarity and just peace with what my future would look like. Just saying yes to those opportunities, being bold, having mentors to help encourage me and, just help me along that process. So thank you for all of that wisdom.
Sure.
So who has been your greatest inspiration?
Gosh, that's a hard one. I would say I feel like I get inspiration everywhere. I get it from my husband sometimes. I will come home from work and I'll be like, I just don't know what to do, this and this and that. And he just has this way of saying, Julie, you know what to do, right? Like, you know what to do. You're just struggling making that decision or whatever. So he's just very grounding. My kids, the same thing. They are just kind-hearted and good people that I'm so proud of. So I think I get it in a lot of different places. I get it from people that work for me when I see them do great things. I get it from some athletes. I'm a big sports fan, and I love learning the backstories of how they became the greatest, in their particular field. So I feel like I get it just about everywhere.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love how, you're incorporating your family and your kids, you have something to learn from everyone.
Yeah.
And that takes a really big sense of humility to just learn from other people and just want to know more about their story and how they got there, because that's what's going to help you grow the most.
Exactly.
And that's really awesome to hear you say that.
Well, thank you.
But is there any lasting advice that you would give for us college students?
We've talked about a lot of it. I think being bold, saying yes, trying new things is really critical. Not being afraid to try new things and step into uncharted territory. Not being afraid to ask questions, especially at this point in your life. Ask all the questions. There's no silly questions at all. So I think that's really important. And then kind of what you hit on, Ellie, actively learning from others. I believe we get to the greatest answer when we have this diversity of perspectives, because everybody's looking at the problem or the opportunity from a different lens. And so learning from others and continuing to be an active learner is really, really critical.
Yeah, for sure. Well, with that, thank you so much for all of your wisdom and insight. I know I just feel so much peace and clarity with what my future will look like and how to go about that. And so I just am so thankful, and
well, thanks for having me.
Really just blessed that you were able to share your insight and wisdom with all of us today. We now have a few minutes to answer some questions for the audience. Yes.
Hi, my name is Lynette Namuli, and I'm a third-year economics major here at UGA, and I'm part of the Institute for Leadership Advancement as well. So my question for you is, being a successful businesswoman, I'm sure you face many obstacles, and how did you deal with those?
Well, I think we're all going to face obstacles along the way. In manufacturing, and as I came up, it's primarily a male-dominated industry. And so being a woman in the industry, there were pros and cons of that. And I think for me, I quite honestly just never let it be a part of who I was. I was a process engineer. I wasn't the only process engineer. Or if you talk to me today, I'm a CEO. I'm not just a woman CEO, if that makes sense. So I think it's important, though, to hit those head on. You're going to face them, and I think you just have to hit them head on and work through them and get past them and realize, find what works for you. We all have a style, I think, what we'll find with addressing issues that come up. You know, you might address it with a little bit of humor, but you get your point across. You might address it directly, you know, head on with someone, but I think we'll all find that style of how we work through those obstacles. Thanks for the question. Yes?
Hello, my name is David Howard. I'm a third-year accounting student here. And coming from the perspective of an accounting student here, they push very heavily to go into public accounting. So can you elaborate on the reasoning as to why you didn't go?
Sure. First of all, love accounting majors. When I graduated, I think there was 6 at the time, so I think I had offers from 3 and maybe not from 2. And for me, I just knew it was not what I wanted to do. My dad had been in a manufacturing role. He was a chief operational officer at a company, so I knew a little bit about that background, and I knew it wasn't the right fit for me. And quite honestly, at the time, the way I was making decisions, Georgia Pacific offered me a job in Florida on the beach versus Chicago, and I was like, beach sounds great. So, we've changed how we make decisions over time, but for me, I knew it wasn't a good fit. I think it's a great background. I mean, I think it's a wonderful background to be in audit, and you see so much. And the nice thing about being in finance or accounting, you can crawl in any door. You know, like, you're welcome to crawl in any door and help us figure out how to make things better. Yes?
So, I was an accounting major, and I heard you were talking about the speed, the accountants of the thoughtful, make the thoughtful decisions. How do you pull those accountants along with the speed that you're talking about?
I think that's a great question because we want to make sure it's not reckless speed. And so we really lean heavily on our finance team to ensure we're making good decisions. And you have to have the right tools and systems in place to ensure we're making good fact-based decisions. But we don't make decisions without having the financial impact understanding. We usually follow the right financial answer, but not always. Sometimes you trust your gut and your instincts and you do something a little differently. But the finance team does a great job of partnering with us. Every business unit has a finance partner. It's kind of like the mini CFO of their business that ensures that we're making good decisions. And then when we make big decisions, say it's an investment or something, we always do a post-audit of it, kind of a post-mortem. What worked well? What didn't work well? What would we do differently? Did we do what we say we were going to do? Are we getting the return we thought we would get? So I think that creates that continuous learning environment as well. Thanks. Yes?
I have another question for you. So what is one of your favorite sports stories?
One of my favorite
Sports stories. Yeah.
Stories. Sports stories. Well, I follow a lot of athletes. So if you ever see a picture in my office, I have an Aaron Rodgers jersey. I have a Herschel Walker helmet. I have a Chipper Jones jersey. I have a Shaq jersey. I have Tom Brady helmet. So I follow the athletes. So probably my favorite athletes are Shaq and Tom Brady. Sometimes that's not popular in this part of the world, but I love learning about their stories and the things they overcame. You think of like a Tom Brady and where he was drafted and to where he is now and how hard he worked to get there. I mean, that is grit and passion and perseverance, and he just embodies it. So I love learning about him and other sports folks that have kind of overcome some of those obstacles to be the greatest in their field. It's fun. Yes?
Hi, I'm Mativ. I'm a third-year finance student, and I took note that you mentioned that it's often to make mistakes. You often make mistakes, and so I was wondering if you could develop on that a little bit about a mistake or hit from the path that you've taken, how you've learned from it, and how you've developed.
Sure. I mean, there's so many. I would tell you early in my career, I was working on a really big project. And I was like chosen to do it, me and this other gentleman that I was friends with, and we were so excited about it, and it was a big investment, and we were in the finance team, we had done all the calculations. They were in the boardroom with the board, which was a big deal at that time, on the 51st floor, going through, and as we're looking at our work, we realized we did part of the calculation completely backwards. And so we had this moment of like the sinking feeling in our stomach, and then we had to decide like, okay, what do we do? And then we had to go and kind of like knock on the board door and be like, hey, can I just get that back from you for a minute and redo this? But I think the important part is we recognized the mistake. It was going to have an impact. We went and addressed it. it was much more impactful to us than anybody in that room. They're just like, okay, so you made this mistake and now you've corrected it. So I think that's the important part, is recognizing we're gonna make mistakes, especially when we're moving quickly. And I think that's important, and how you recover from them. There's a lot of times if somebody makes a mistake, if they just say, God, I don't know what I was thinking, I just wasn't thinking, then you just recover and you move on and you work on it together. But somebody who won't admit they made a mistake or tries to cover up the mistake, then you can't really work with that relationship. Sure. Yes?
I am Randy Brooks, and I serve as the Director of Diversity at the college.
Wonderful.
Thank you again for being here. So my question is, so you're telling the students to say yes to new opportunities. Have there been times that you didn't say yes that you regret, and if you can elaborate?
Sure. I mean, I think there are times when, there was a time when I had the opportunity to move, to relocate to New York for a role that I ended up not taking. And at the time, I felt like I had kind of in some way let myself down, let my mentor down, these type of things. I think it worked out in the end, but I definitely went through this little bit of time of regret. And if anything, it probably motivated me to do even more, to try to be helpful, to show, I couldn't go to upstate New York, but I can do all these things here for you, where we're working together. But there will definitely be times, I think, when it's just not right. It's not right for you in whatever situation you're in to take on a role or to take on an assignment, and it's okay to say no. You'll learn from that as well. Yes?
You made some pretty diverse jumps between roles. Can you talk a little bit about how you had the confidence to switch into a different industry or a job with very different responsibilities and focus?
I think it really comes down to having those mentor relationships and the people you work with, and realizing, even though I didn't know how to do some of these things, enough confidence to figure out I could figure it out, and then enough humility to say I don't know how to do it, I need to go figure it out and learn from people that know how to do this, and spend time and put in the effort to learn from those people. So when I stepped into process control engineering, I was not an engineering degreed person, and I was working with a lot of operators. I spent a lot of time on the lines, on the assets with operators who had run machines for 30 years so that I could learn as much as I could during that period of time from them. So I think it's really that openness to acknowledge, I don't know how to do it, but I'm confident enough to try it, and I'm gonna go figure it out, and I'm gonna learn from people who are closest to it that know how to do these things. Yes?
My name is David Vaughn. I'm currently a third-year major in economics and international affairs, and I'm a part of ILA as well. And first of all, thank you for taking your time out of your day
Sure.
to speak with us. It's been very insightful and helpful. And then my question is, right now it sounds like at Mativ, your values align pretty closely with that of the company, but has there ever been a time in your career where the decision that seems to make the most business sense clashes with your personal values? And if so, how would you reconcile that?
I can't think of a significant one. I mean, I think once you've stated your values and you know them, it makes it really clear cut. I mean, there's lots of times, like I talked about safety, there'll be times when employees will bring forth investments that are significant investments, but they'll improve the safety element of our business. And so because we've said and we know in our hearts safety is our #1 priority, even though that investment doesn't have a strong return, it's the right thing to do, because you can't get a finger back that's been cut off or an arm that's crushed or anything like that. So I think that's when it comes into play, when maybe the financial return on it is not aligned with your values. That would be one example, but our values went out in that case. And I would tell you, I can't think of a time when values haven't won out. We've backed out of M&A deals because we didn't believe we could trust, who we were working with. We understood that they lied to us about something or led us astray about something, and you can't work with that. Sure. Yes.
Hi, my name is Alec Mullen. I'm a marketing and communication studies student here. I'm also an ILA fellow. You touched a lot on curiosity and jumping into roles in your background. You've had so many different jobs.
That's a great question. I think sometimes I did know and sometimes I didn't. Sometimes the opportunities became available. When I left Georgia Pacific, that was a tough decision because I loved Georgia Pacific, but also my mentor had left and he was recruiting me. And so I felt like at that time, it was a good time for me to make a change and try something different. And I went from a very big company to a smaller company and I absolutely loved it. So I love that you can put your thumbprint, your fingerprints on things and see them. But I think sometimes you're going to know, and sometimes it's just going to be take the opportunity when you see it.
Thank you very much for those inspiring words and for visiting us today. On behalf of the Institute for Leadership Advancement and the Terry Leadership Speaker Series, we would like to present you with a small token of our appreciation as a thank you for being with us today. Please join me in thanking today's speaker.
Thank you. You did a great job.
Also, we want to thank all of you for attending our first Fall 2020 Terry Leadership Speaker Series. We would like to invite you to attend our Mason Public Leadership Lecture featuring Shan Cooper, founder and CEO of Journey Forward Strategies, on Wednesday, October 5th. Again, thank you.